Okay, welcome back. We've got our pizza cutter in its entirety, and this is where I would like you guys to have a play around really and start applying materials to things. It looks pretty good. You will now use your newly found or newly honed skills in Inventor, possibly to create your own handle. We don't want all of these looking the same. But if we go to the top now, we've got the appearance tool. So I'm going to click on the appearance tool, and we want to make this look more realistic. So if I select a part, so I've got the disc here, and if we want this to be in, let's say we've got chrome, what we've got, polished chrome, polished blue chrome, polished black chrome. Let's just go for polished chrome. So if I go right click and assign to selection, what it's done now, it's very difficult to see because it was grey in the first place, but it's turning that component into polished chrome. So I want to turn all these parts into polished chrome. So if I highlight each part and just use the shift key to keep selecting them, and then right click and assign to selection, those parts now, if we zoom in on them, it's got a bit of a polished chrome appearance. So next up, what we could do is have a look at, imagine the handle's going to be plastic, for example. We can select the different parts of the handle and right click. Say if we wanted it to be canary yellow, right click assign to selection, and we have a yellow handle and polished chrome. You might not like the canary yellow, so you can right click and we could go down to see what dark green would look like, assign to selection. Well, dark green doesn't look very good. You want it to look a bit traditional, and you might want it to be a timber made out of driftwood, for example, assigned to selection. And that looks suitably rubbish, so we'll just go to that there. And let's just find a nice plastic colour. Let's just go light click and light red. There we are. So we have a red handle, polished chrome. And that's beginning to look realistic, and you can just see some nice shadows and effects coming from it. That's pretty good, but to make this even more realistic, there's other parts to this. So I could then go to environments, view, and if we go to the view icon here, we can change our visual styles, we can change our shadows and make things look more realistic. I just want to find a nice view of it that looks suitably good. So I'm going to change that to my view. We can change the visual style. So remember that I'm going to change that to be I wonder what a wireframe would look like. That looks pretty rubbish. But have a play around, see what they will look like. Monochrome, got watercolor, sketch illustration. But we want to try and make this look as realistic as possible. So go for realistic. I'm going to go for let's go for a one light. Let's see what reflections look like on it as well. If any reflections. And to see if the reflections work, we're going to enable ray tracing. So the ray tracing will make it look as photorealistic as possible. So we just have to wait for that at the moment. There's a box here, and it's just going through it, and it's in its rough process at the moment. And we're about halfway through. It's fine-tuning it. If I just pull that, got 22, 23. It should be nearly there. And it's nearly there. Okay, and that has now finished. And if we wanted to, any more changes we make, we'd have to go back to ray tracing, so we'd have to wait for that to do that. But what we can do now is file, if we wanted to export that image there on its own as a 2D graphic, export 2D graphic, I like JPEGs, and save, and it's generating it as an off-screen image. And it's particularly useful if you're doing some non-examined work, non-examined element, your coursework later on, and you just want to be putting your investigations in there. This is the professional way of doing this, of taking that and copying it and putting it into your coursework, and it's just taking its time doing it. There we are. And if I go onto my folders on my desktop, and we go to the pizza cutter file, and we'll have an assembly 2 drawing in there of our pizza cutter, which we can take. Now the only thing with that I've just realised is that the resolution of that isn't going to be that good, so we may want to export again, image and assembly 2. Now on that, with the options, it's really important, that's it, pixels. maybe if you change that to 1,000 pixels by 1,000 pixels, and you will get a drawing of a much better resolution. That then it would be highly pixelated and not very good. So if I click save now, I want to replace it. Albeit now this is a much more high res image, it's going to take longer to generate, so just bear with it for a moment or two. It's very nearly there. If you look at the browser there, it's nearly, it's getting there. And that should be somewhere in there. Let's go back to Assembly 2. And that should be much more of a higher res image. I can zoom in. That's okay. So there we have it. There is some other tools that we can have a play with. Thank you very much.